What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be all about how to make a blanket ladder. Super easy project. It doesn't cost you a whole lot of money to make, but you can sell them, you can give them away as gifts, and they don't take very long to make either. So I busted out the laser engraver on this one. I'm going to touch on that in the video as well, using the LightBurn software. If that's something you guys are interested in, hopefully that'll help you out a little bit. But here it is. This is the back side. I'll show y'all the front at the end of the video. So stay tuned, and thank you as always for watching. Blanket ladders can be super simple projects, but they can actually help out a lot with the organization in your living room, bedroom, etc. So this is going to be a very simple design. There's going to be two 60-inch rails on each side and 4 rungs that are going to be 18 inches long. So the overall dimensions of this project are going to be 60 inches tall, and I made a slight adjustment to make it 24 inches wide instead of 21 inches. I'm using a rough cut piece of pine from my local sawmill for this project. This board is approximately 8 feet long, 11.5 inches wide, and 1.5 inches thick. So if you go to your local home improvement store, a 2x12 or a couple of 2x4s will do the trick as well. So this is too wide for my non-sliding miter saw, so I just cut it at 61.5 inches using my circular saw to make it a little bit easier to handle. This rough sawn pine was actually extremely flat from the get-go, so I took it over to the planer, made some small shallow passes to get everything to the same thickness, and the pieces ended up being about 1.25 inches thick. These boards were a little too thick to use my joiner jig, so I just used my track saw to joint an edge. Made quick work of it. It's pine. I still made 2 passes just to make sure that there weren't any burn marks, and I got a nice straight cut. Once the boards were jointed, I took them over to the table saw and I ripped everything to 3 inches wide. Now you could easily go thinner for the rails and the rungs of this blanket ladder, but I just wanted to keep them a little bit wider because I'm going to be laser engraving them, so I wanted the text on the rungs to be bigger. Once the work at the table saw was complete, I took all the boards over to the miter saw and I cut 4 of them at 18 inches long, those will be the rungs, and I cut 2 at 60 inches long, which will be the vertical rails. I prepped all the rungs for laser engraving. I always just throw some pencil marks when I'm sanding. It just makes it easier, and it makes sure that I sand everything nice and evenly. Sanded everything up to 220 on this project, and in just a second we're going to talk about the LightBurn laser engraving software. So I have a JTech laser engraver attachment for my CNC, and I use the LightBurn software on all of my laser engraving. It's pretty simple to use and you get some pretty good results. So all of the rungs on this blanket ladder are going to have some custom laser engraved text. So I start off by making a rectangle that is 3x18, which are the dimensions of the rungs themselves. So you can select any font you want on this. If you don't have it, you can download it to your computer and then it'll upload into LightBurn. I just put out the text, then I select both, and there's that little crosshair icon at the top. That's to center everything. So I center the text in with the box. That way I can get all of this spacing squared away. After messing around with the text size, and once I get it to where I want it, I go ahead and select both the text and the rectangle and group them using that little 3-headed icon up top. Once they're grouped, I then select the X position and the Y position with a predetermined numbers that I already have laid out on the CNC wasteboard. You'll see a little line here in a second, but once the design in LightBurn is in the right position, there's a little frame button over here that I'm about to click on, and I just click that to make sure that the laser runs around the actual workpiece and I have a solid idea that the laser is where it needs to be and it's homed properly. So once I hit that frame button, the laser just kind of goes around where the LightBurn software has the design on the computer. So as you can see, that laser is going around that 3x18 piece properly, and that means my design is set up. So once I do that, I go ahead and hit the fire button just to make sure that my X and Y is properly set up, which it is. I'll go back and select the images and ungroup them, and I'll delete the outer border because I don't want to burn a line. And I'll just pull up the settings here so that you guys can look at them. I scan at 100% power with this laser, and the overscanning at 2.5% really gives me good results, so the laser will go past the text. So all of the black area, that's what's going to be lasered, and it turned out great. Here's a little time lapse for you, and I'm not going to show you every rung because the setup was exactly the same on all of them, but it's a cool little laser. You're not going to be able to do any production mode type work with it, but for custom text on cutting boards or smaller projects like this, it's totally worth the investment. While the rungs were being lasered, I went ahead and laid out all of my pencil lines on the vertical rails for the attachment sites for the rungs. I also found the middle of the board, which ended up being 11/16, and made my marks so that I can bore them out on the drill press. Took the vertical rails over to the drill press and had a 3/8 of an inch Forstner bit in there. This is going to allow me to countersink the screws and put in some walnut plugs for a nice decorative touch. I picked up this plug cutter for $10. I was skeptical, but it works pretty good. I had some scrap walnut laying around, so I wanted to add a little bit of a aesthetically pleasing touch to this blanket ladder. I'll put the link to this plug cutter in my Amazon store as well. Worked pretty good for 10 bucks. I used 3.5-inch construction screws to secure the rungs to the rails in this project. I started by drilling a pilot hole to ensure that the screws went in nice and straight. And before I forget, I want to make sure I cover the spacing of the rungs in this project. The first rung is 2 inches from the top of the vertical rails, and then there is 11 inches of space in between each rail, which leaves a 13-inch gap between the floor and the bottom of the last rung. I decided to throw a chamfer edge profile around this entire blanket ladder, just a real subtle 45. I thought it gave it a really nice touch. I went around the entire outside perimeter as well as the inside of the rungs on both the front and the back side. This cordless router is the jam, by the way. If you guys don't have a cordless router and you've been thinking about getting one, I highly recommend it. And on this, specifically on the DeWalt router, that brake, that's sweet. After some final sanding at 220 using the orbital sander and a sanding block, it was time to put some finish on this project. I chose a satin lacquer finish for this project. It went on super easy. I just brushed it on, dries quick, and leaves a nice smooth finish without too much of a glossy look. After 3 coats of finish and some drying time, this thing was done and looking excellent. Alright y'all, that's a wrap. As you can see, pretty simple project. Doesn't take a whole lot of time to make either. I added in a few things like the walnut plugs, the laser engraving. Obviously that takes a little bit of extra time, but this was a custom order from a realtor for friends of ours that are actually moving into their first new house. So I just wanted to make it a little bit nicer. But this project you can make with 2x4s. You can make with one 2x12. So limited resources needed to make this. And again, you could sell these. with no engraving or anything on there, I don't see why you couldn't get $60 for that. Easy. And your cost of materials is less than 20. So you could sell them. They make great gifts. The holidays are coming up. Knock out a bunch of these in an afternoon, boom. You saved hundreds of dollars on Christmas gifts or whatever holiday you celebrate. So that's it. If you got questions, leave them in the comments. I hope that you guys liked a little bit of the laser engraving stuff with the LightBurn software. I'm still kind of learning that myself, so look out for videos in the future going more in depth on that as I learn more about it. But as always, thank you guys for watching. If you're not subscribed at this point, I don't know what you're doing, so I guess you're not going to be subscribed. But give me a thumbs up, comment below, and follow me on Instagram. Thanks guys. See ya.